Hello and welcome to the Car Care Nut live stream. How you guys doing today? I hope everybody's doing well. So I want to share a few things. Update on the upcoming new Car Care Nut channel car. It's a Toyota. Some have asked if it was a Lexus. It's a Toyota and she's coming. It's getting built as of yesterday on November 12th. So should be sometime next week. I am super excited. Finally, it's time. I have gotten past my 2012 Camry accident, and I am slightly tired of driving my very expensive per mile car. I just want to preserve that one. That's kind of as a dream car. That was not the plan to drive it every single day. So thankfully, that thing is coming just in time for winter. Kind of going to be hard to drive. I usually like to buy my new cars right around April, May, beginning of the summer. So at least you'd have some few months without snow piling on it, being dirty. But I guess with the shortage and all that, I had no choice. And one more update for everybody. The Car Care Nut channel now has a physical mailing address. I don't know if you guys noticed, I've been posting it in the videos, but I thought I'd share it with you. So the Car Care Nut, the P.O. Box is 2850 Orland Park, Illinois 60462. And I will share that on the comments. Okay, that didn't come out good. Let me write it again. So 2850 60462. There we go. I posted it in the comments. It's also I've been posting it. If you guys want to send me anything, go for it. I already got a few mail from some viewers, which I really appreciate. Thank you very much for those that sent it. So let's get started. How about that? You guys ready? Let's do this. So Ted Pogorzelski, thank you so much for joining the live stream, sir. I appreciate it. Juan Alencastro, I have a 2016 Toyota Highlander non-hybrid, 95,000 miles. Should I drain and fill the transmission fluid or leave it alone? I would, at this point, you're not too late. Just do a single drain and fill and then repeat it again if you want the earliest 30,000 miles and you're all set. Joel Ferrer, for a 2018 Corolla with CVT transmission, when do I need to change the transmission fluid? I'm at 40,000 miles and only use this part-time for Uber. Can I change it at 100? I would change it every 60,000 miles. Make sure you use the right fluid, which is CVT FE for that one. Toyota CVT fluid, of course. Andrew Pive, what's your opinion about automatic car washes with brushes that come in contact with your car? Is it really as damaging as some may believe? Better off hand washing or using contactless car wash? Well, a contactless car wash uses such harsh chemicals, it makes it kind of pointless. And as far as contacting the body, look, I wash my cars in a brush car wash. Yes, it does cause hairline scratches all over the place, but you need to ask yourself this: is this a show car you're driving? Because most of the time, you're driving, especially if you're driving a Toyota, a Lexus, this is a daily driver. Unless it's a special model that you are preserving for you're not driving it every day. You're better off washing it. That is the most convenient to you than not washing it. And every few years, when you see it starting to get a few scratches from just normal use, get it detailed, get the outside, clay barred, buffed and polished and all this good stuff. Have a professional do it if you don't have experience with it. I don't try to do that because A, I don't have the patience. Second, I don't have the experience with this kind of stuff. I'd rather get it perfect, and I'm very OCD, so I'd rather have a professional do it. And I work in this business, so I have someone very close that I trust that does my cars for me, and I'm very happy with that. But hand washing, I will share with you a quick story. You really need to know the hand wash place, because I remember a friend of mine had a beautiful on a picture, not so beautiful to own Audi A8 2013. He was crazy about this car. He loved it. It was a very nice car, horrible to work on, and I worked on it a lot. It was a pain. But he always took it to a hand car wash until he took it to one hand car wash that he always takes it to. And apparently the guy that was drying it or doing something to it. He had something either stuck in the towel or maybe he had a ring, and he would leave scratches all over the car. And guess what that car guy said? Oh, we're not responsible. That didn't happen here, whatever. And now he's stuck with scratches all over the car. Be careful with those. That's all I'm going to say. Ryan says, what do you think about the Lexus twin turbo V6 in the LS and the LX in hot, dry Australia in terms of reliability? So the new engine has been out in the LS. As many people say, there's issues with the LS, this and that. There's actually not as many issues as you might think, although the LS is a model that is not as common as well. But if we really go back to the roots, and this will apply, by the way, we're getting closer to when we're going to talk about the Tundra. I am now hunting just to update you on the new cars. I don't talk about new cars when they haven't been out and in front of me, because I'm not going to just go to the Toyota press room and read to you the press release and give you my comments on it. That just doesn't seem like, to me, it's informative. It's public information that everybody knows. I'm waiting for, right now I'm hunting after a Corolla Cross. That's going to be the first review. We'll do a full mechanical review on it and talk about the trims. I had a chance to drive one recently, and I'll give you my opinion on it. And same thing with the Tundra. But going back to the main thing, the engine, the V6, the twin turbo V6, it is essentially, if you own a 2018 to current Toyota Camry 4-cylinder, take that same engine, take out one cylinder, and glue it two together. That's basically what the V6 is, and added the two turbos. Now, turbo engines, this is my opinion, and this is the opinion of everybody, and I don't care what auto manufacturers say, it's going to be the case. Turbo engines, they need more maintenance, and eventually, at some point, turbos will have issues. They spin at very high RPM, there's a lot of heat, and that's just the way it is. But at the same time, turbos have come a long way since the days of the, for the third generation, fourth generation Supra. So as far as reliability, they're not going to be as reliable as a non-turbo car, of course, but are these turbos going to go out at 200,000 miles or plus? That might not be such a bad deal at that point, but time will tell. But as far as the engine is very complicated. That's the 4-cylinder is complicated, but the new one is complicated. I do have my faith in Toyota that they have gotten their, T's crossed and I's dotted or something of that nature. So we'll see. We'll see as far as reliability. But as far as technical information, that's coming hopefully soon as I get my hand on one. Andrew, oh, sorry, we did this one. Bangi Cruz. I have a 2004 Solara that still runs very well. What do you think about the car? It kind of runs like a Lexus reject. It kind of looks like a Lexus reject. They designed it and gave it to Toyota instead. I personally feel they're very nice cars. Look, the problem with the Solara is they, especially, I don't know if it's a convertible or not, they did not appeal to the younger buyer. So usually they appeal to the older buyers. I'm talking when they were new. They're actually fabulous cars. They're best of a Camry. They have a great engine, even toward the end when they drop them off. They're great cars. They do have their issues, as they get older, a few common power steering leaks and valve cover leak and whatnot, but nothing major. You're not going to see a transmission just up and go out at 100,000 miles on a Solara. Honestly, if you like the car, if you feel like it is not falling apart, doesn't have major issues, I'd keep it. Because I remember a customer that had 350,000 miles on one, and it was in for some rear control arms that were loose, of course, at that miles. And he was like, just do it. He didn't even flinch. These are really good cars. I would keep it if you're not just flat bored with it. So Vanessa de la Cruz. I was able to find an IS350 on sale nearby, 2008 model. I don't like the 250s as they seem to be super unreliable. Fact or myth, anything else I need to look out for on an i8 IS250? I think that was a typo. If you're going for an IS350, these are very good cars. Just make sure you research its service history. Make sure to get checked by a mechanic if you're not mechanically inclined. It's always safe. You never know, even if it's a good car to buy. If you're buying a neglected one, that would be not a good car to buy. But the thing about the IS250s is carbon buildup. That's something very common with them, and to a point where it makes me, why are you going with an IS250 when you can go with a 350 and it's a safer bet. You have a better engine there that's not prone to doing this. Now, yes, I posted this in the video, the best and worst Lexus models. Some people said, well, I have an IS250, it has 300,000 miles and it's perfect. Great, I'm happy for that. But the problem is, you don't know how the previous owner drove it. Were they driving very soft and very repeated short trips? Because that's how the carbon buildup happens even in non-direct injected cars. And especially in those cars, that's the kind of driving. Most people assume, well, this is a low mile car. The people barely drove it, didn't beat on it. Actually, in these cars, you kind of want that because that helps with the carbon. But playing it safe, go with the IS350. 2008 is a good year. Just make sure you get it checked, because these cars, when they're really neglected, they really become problematic because they are a little complicated and labor is high on them. But otherwise, it's a good car to buy. So, Dark Crow, how long could Estima Hybrid 2009 live with an original battery and doesn't make sense to change it? Well, I'm not very familiar with the Estima Hybrid. I'm sure that's an international model, but it's a 2009 hybrid, should be right around second or third generation. So if the original battery is working, I wouldn't worry about it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Doesn't make sense to change it. It absolutely makes no sense to change it unless you have issues with it. So why LXND? I am a fan of the Toyota Celica. I found 2001 model on sale, but I am not sure if these can go beyond 200,000 miles. Are these solid Toyotas or a model to avoid? I can't afford an 86, that's why. So the Celicas of that generation, they were good, but with bad maintenance, they were really bad. They were notorious to burn oil, so that's one thing with that engine. And they were somewhat difficult to work on with a few things, few obvious, like the coolant was kind of a pain to bleed, and any work in the front of the engine was kind of tight. But overall, they're good cars. They're very similar to a Corolla, but absolutely avoid rusty ones. You can see them over 200,000 miles, but they're going to be burning oil, and if they're rusty, they'll be falling apart. If you avoid a rusty one, you buy one that's had very good service history. They're actually not bad cars to have. Emmanuel B. Is it possible to program a Toyota Century JDM car used remote for my 2001 US market Lexus GS300? They both use the same design key, and I don't have the original remote key. Honestly, that will be trial and error. You're crossing from two different markets. There could be different, just because the fob looks the same, it might operate different frequencies. So that's honestly going to be trial and error. You just have to try it. Steve Yu, do Toyota brake pads come with new clips? What do you think of the Toyota OEM brake pads compared to the Toyota economy pads? So there are three types of pads actually, and let's go through them real quick so you know. The original ones, the factory ones, the ones that came from the factory, these are semi-metallic. They're the best, of course, and they do not come with anything, just the pads in the box. Then there is the old style economy pads. Are also, they're called ceramics. They're ceramic. And the first generation of these pads, which should be discontinued now, although I've been hearing some markets are still selling them, they were not good. They were made noise and had some issues. That's why they were phased out. But those came with a generic shim at the back of them. Looks like an aftermarket pad. I hated them from the day I saw them. But the second one that came out, which is the current one, those only come with a packet of grease, nothing else. That's how you know the new style from the old one. But in between them, when they first made the switch, there was no packet of grease with them. So if you get one of those, that's probably an older stock. But the newest one, when you buy, it just comes with the pads and comes with a packet of grease. And as far as what I think of them, look, folks, if you are a car care nut, well, I guess most of the viewers are, but if you are a car care nut and you are OCD and you sleep better at night knowing this is the same pad that I'm replacing that came from the factory, go with the factory pads. But they are very expensive, and they're getting more expensive because it almost feels like Toyota is discouraging people from buying them because these are pads they use at the factory. The ceramic pads are good, especially after the update when they went to the later ones. They're really good. They're quiet, but they do require that special grease that come with them. It's not special, but that's the exact grease they want. That's why they started including them. Otherwise, they make noise. But other than that, they're good. I don't see an issue with them, and their price is very competitive with, especially when you go, researching online, find a good deal. Their price is very competitive with aftermarket. How dare you? Hello, the check engine light on my 2006 RAV4 comes on for a day or two and then goes off. Does this at least once a month. You're going to have, when the light comes on, you're going to want to check for codes. Sometimes the codes will still be there. This is an intermittent problem or something on the edge where it's passing and failing, passing and failing. I would check for codes and see and progress from there. Tony Haddad, thank you for your great content. Thank you very much, sir, for watching. I appreciate it. I am looking at getting a new Camry or Avalon. Can I downsize the Avalon rim from 1817 taller tire? Can I have the computer reprogrammed? So yes, you can change the tire size. That's not an issue. As far as the computer reprogram, there's not much to reprogram. It's just the speedo will be slightly off, and you can actually, there is a customization. You can up to plus 4 miles an hour, minus 4 miles an hour. You can kind of bring it closer to the correct speed. So Michael Johnson, Lexus claimed to have noise reduction wheels. Is that a real thing or a marketing gimmick? It's a real thing. It's a real gimmick. Let's put it this way. So how would I word this? I'm trying to word this. See, the thing is, yes, the design of the wheels could make a tiny little noise difference. But the problem is, if you can hear that over all the road noise and over all the wind noise and over everything else, if you can hear that difference from the wheel, I mean, you're basically sitting on a chair outside the car listening to the wheel. You're not going to hear it. So do you see how there's the gimmicky part? It really does not. This is just, they did something that makes a very tiny little difference in the noise level, and now it's a big deal, and they put it in their marketing thing. But is it really going to make a big difference? And the most important thing, should you pay more money for it? Absolutely not. Lexus cars are quiet, and they're trying to, and I am bleeding. Sorry, guys, dry lips. I got to deal with that, so you're going to have to deal with me bleeding all over myself. I wouldn't pay more for it. Absolutely not. So that's now you know it's a real gimmick. So one Bozo 9. I know you've said Toyota oil filters are good, but I'm wondering your thoughts on using a higher efficiency oil filter for longer engine life. Here's exactly what I think about this. So you have an oil filter, the original oil filter. It works great. There's nothing to worry about it there. The one that is high efficiency or bare micron or filters better, yeah, it works great. But do you really need it? That's the question. Because I don't want people to get the indication, because that's, some of these companies will go after this. Oh, here's a better oil that costs 3 times more than the normal one, and here is a better filter that filters better 3 times, 100 times better than the original filter. So now you can go 15,000 miles on your oil change. Please don't do that. It's just not, if you do the math, you're not doing more protection. If this filter filters better, it does. They're not lying. It does 400 times better, whatever the case may be. But do you need it? Is there, if there's no that high level of contamination, do you really need that high level of a filter? That's where it becomes kind of counterproductive. Yeah, they filter better, but is there anything to filter that needs a better filter? Because if you carry your maintenance at the right intervals, there is no need for it. Let's put it this way. Okay, I mean, try to clean this up. Sorry, guys. That's how life treats you sometimes. We are entering the winter season, so I have to start remembering all my winter stuff. That's the dry lips. I gotta work on my whole house humidifier. That's broken too. Go figure. We just replaced the furnace now. The whole house humidifier is broken. So Chris Burtz, do you think Toyota watches your videos? Also, I have a 2012 Corolla with a driver's side air vent rattle. How do I fix it without tearing the dash apart? So do I think Toyota watches my videos? Honestly, I could not really tell you. I respect Toyota, of course. I mean, that's kind of obvious with my videos, but I don't step on their toe. I like to respect what is proprietary. There's a lot of things I know that if I share, it'll be a viral video, but I don't betray the people that trust me with the information. So I like to play fair with them, say the truth, say things as they are, talk about public things, not share, not have a conflict of interest of what I do for work. So I think that's as far as I go with Toyota. Um, I really respect the company, and I don't particularly would like their influence too much because we'd like to keep this natural and unbiased. And they are a fabulous company that I respect a lot. Are they perfect? They're not, of course, but are they fabulous in my opinion, better than many others? I think they are. And as far as your Corolla, the driver's side air vent. So that air vent, if I remember correctly, you could just pop the bottom of the dash and pop the vent out. You're gonna this is kind of gonna be the fix it as it goes. There's no one fix for this. You're gonna want to pull the vent out, make sure it's the vent itself that is vibrating. It is not a hard vent to pull. I mean, that 2012 Corolla, you can tear half the dash in, I don't know, 5-10 minutes. I know that I might be exaggerating this, but it is really that simple, especially the top piece. Um, you want to pull that vent out and see. You're going to not tear the whole dash. You're talking maybe 2-3 panels you pull out and the thing comes out. But you do want to um, take it out, drive it, see if it goes. If not, try some insulation around it, try some foam. Toyota makes a fabulous, actually, noise insulation kit. It's very expensive, but it has all shapes and sizes of foam. It's designed for that. I might try to get you guys the part number. I mean, very expensive. Probably we're talking $200-300, I think. But just to, I'll get one of these kits. I'll buy it for me, and we'll kind of film it so you can get an idea of what's included and what to use when you're doing a noise insulation repairs. So because you can find most of this stuff aftermarket, or not aftermarket, but elsewhere. So Praxis Blockchain Technologies. Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate it. So Logan Miller, there is a weird grinding noise that sounds like it comes from inside my dash after driving for 5 minutes or so. Just started doing it recently, 2016 Camry. So it could very well be a servo motor. So try to change the direction of the airflow, to kind of play around with the direction of airflow, the temperature, and see if you can duplicate it. Because we've been seeing a lot of servos making noise. And that's becoming kind of, the few TSBs popped up now on them. Multiple models. I've seen a Highlander, I've seen RX, I've seen a Camry like yours. So that's becoming something potentially common. It's nothing broken. It's just the servo is making noise, and gets to a point where it gets really annoying. And I would, replace the servo. They're not exactly DIY. They can be a little, unless you're used to hanging underneath the dash. Some of them are easier than others, but. So Lewis Hain, my 2012 Tundra had a VVTi rattle when cold. As you said, I put Mobile 1, 0-20, and now it's more like a plastic BB shaken in a tin can instead of a rock. Should I replace the chain tensioner? So two things on that engine. I'm assuming you have a 5.7 or a 4.6. Do this exact sequence that I'm about to tell you about. And this might not make sense, but hear me out here. Two reasons that engine sounds like that. You either have a collapsed lifter, or there's something with the chain or tensioner, most likely the tensioner. But before you do anything with the tensioner, try this. It's very simple. Park it overnight, preferably after an oil change. Park it overnight. Start it in the morning. Do not touch the throttle. Just let it idle. Leave it there until you're at full operating temperature. I mean, leave it for at least 15-20 minutes. Then you're going to hold the throttle steady and use a pedal depressor, because you're not going to be able to hold it like that at 2,500 RPM, and leave it there for at least 2-3 minutes. Then let it idle down and see if the noise goes away the next day. This is something is popping up lately with the lifters bleeding down. It's unknown why they're bleeding down. They shouldn't, but this is the fix for them that we've found through trial and error, of course. If this doesn't do it, then it's a chain tensioner, but you're going to need to find which side it is, because this engine has two chain tensioners. And honestly, I would take the front timing cover off, because if the tensioner, I don't even, wait a second, I don't even remember if this has an access hole. I don't think so. I think you're going to have to pull the front timing cover off. Kind of a bit of a job, but it's not that bad. So I would start with the easy stuff that you can kind of do, that procedure I told you about, and go from there. So AAC Houd H. I have a super loud sound system in my 2016 Camry Hybrid. Will the loud vibrations from the sub affect the hyper battery? No, I don't think they will affect it, but if this is overkill sound system, you could affect the electrical system of the car. But if it's something reasonable, I mean, I don't know how the install is. It could have issues, but these loud vibrations should not. Most, the normal vibrations from the road. I mean, unless I'm talking something, I've been watching some videos where the whole window is shaking and it pops. Unless it's one of those, then it shouldn't be an issue. So Albedo 2019 4Runner four-wheel drive, will the Redline 7075 GL4 synthetic oil work on the transfer case? Yes, that should be fine. I would use that. So JM, my 1981 Ford Festiva Sport beats any Toyota product. I don't even know what a 1981 Ford Festiva is, but if you're happy with it, I am glad for you, sir. Lala G, how you doing, sir? Glad to see you. JT, it's good to see you, man. Really good. Hold on. What happened to the chat here? It jumped on me. Hang on. Let's find it again. Guys are awesome. Have I said that before? I need to say it again. So, Akael, thank you so much. Mahmoud Dawood. Eric, thank you. Thank you guys for coming to the live stream. Jason, would it still be okay to drain and fill a transmission on a 2011 Venza with 95? I think we already answered that. Yes, you can, but I would do it soon. I like this. Cool. That on the mailing address. Cool. That means we can ask Santa AMD to do a giveaway. We can do that. Actually, I have one planned soon when we buy the car. John, thank you very much, sir, for watching the channel. We've already answered this one. Spider Logan, how you doing, sir? Okay, here we go. Mike, someone ran into my wife's driver's side door. The door has a big dent and the mirror vibrates. Is it likely that my door needs replaced or just the mirror? So I would need to know what kind of car it is, but it depends. It I want you to look at the dent in the door. Did it pull the structure underneath the mirror, or the area underneath the mirror? Does it look compromised? And then, fortunately, you're going to have to take the door panel out, see the inner structure. Is it damaged? Is it compromised? Because if the mirror didn't shake before, you're going to want to repair the body first, not the mirror itself. Unless the mirror was hit and damaged, I would address the door, because it could be the structure of the door that's weakened. Could be the reason why your mirror is shaking. I wouldn't just go and replace anything unless you fix the obvious damage first. Your Advocate Alliance. Thank you very much, sir. Guys, Your Advocate Alliance is actually a big YouTube channel, and we are in talks. We might do something together for you guys. Thank you very much, sir, for joining the live stream and your generous donation. I appreciate it. So let's see here. So are the catalytic converter easy stolen on 2021 4Runner? Not as easy as, say, a Tundra. That's, for some reason, the Tundra is just, and now the Tacoma, we're starting to see a few. The Tundra is the #1 truck right now, after the Priuses, of course, second generation, the first one, and the third generation. But not as much on the 4Runner. It seems to be a little bit more kind of tucked up by the frame. But one that was a surprise is a Corolla Cross. You guys will get the idea. I don't want to repeat this and give anybody ideas, but they are kind of exposed on the Corolla Cross. Ian Smith, is it possible for Toyota to program 8 TPMS sensors into a 2013 Prius? Just switch from summer to snow, or aftermarket TMS an option? So Not on that model. So some models will have like a main set and a second set, but the 13 Prius, I don't think it has that option. Usually, like Land Cruiser, I think will have that. These are the one model that comes to mind. But as far as the TPMS sensors aftermarket, I wouldn't go aftermarket. It's up to you. It's trial and error. Some of them might work. Some of them might work initially and then stop working. I don't really like aftermarket TPMS sensors, and that's just my opinion. I've seen so many problems with them that are they even worth it? But I know the originals are expensive, so that's another thing to consider. So PRUSY, thank you so much for your generous donation. Let's see here. Midwest Encyclopedic. What do you think about the hybrid Sienna? Is the four-cylinder engine powerful enough? So I've said this. I've reviewed the Sienna, a little bit more detail, but I'll give you the gist about the engine part. The I think it's like actually a very nice concept, and they're selling a lot. People love it, are loving them because it's just you've never had a car this size that got this good gas mileage. And I know, there's a Pacifica, whatever, but you give it a few years and it'll, not very reliable cars. But the four-cylinder is adequate. That's the word I will use for it. If you're gonna load this thing up and fill it up with luggage, you're going up mountains, it's gonna be screaming a little bit, honestly. But how often do you do that? That's the question you need to ask yourself. Some people will do that because they live in a mountainous area. They'll use this thing mainly for traveling with the family. So I understand that that's an issue. But if you're just traveling normally on flat roads, every once in a while, you're going to have mountainous and you're going to be thrashing the car to go up and down. It's okay that one time, because the rest of the time when you're driving on a flat surface and driving normally, not racing, I mean, you don't buy a minivan for it to be super fast. Um, it's going to be great, that gas mileage. You're hauling the family comfortable, the car is packed with features, and you're getting potentially 30 plus miles per gallon. That's pretty good for a van of that size. Rusty Car 2013 Lexus ES350 sounds like it has a bad power steering pump. However, I know it's electric, loud whining sound, only 65K miles and 80. So a few things you want to check. One of them is the alternator. There is two wires going to the alternator, not two wires, but like one connector and the big wire. Don't worry about the big wire, the connector. Kind of hard to reach in there. Be careful of the fan. As the car is making the whining noise, pull that connector off. Does the whining noise go away? If it does, you potentially have an issue with the alternator. But before you do anything with the alternator, check your battery. If you have a weak battery, we've seen some alternators sing is the word I'm going to use when the battery is bad and they're trying to charge it. But as far as other loud whining noises, could be an idler, could be a water pump. Of course, nothing with the power steering. There's no power steering pump. But I think your description of the sound is perfect, because that's actually, I've heard a lot of noises that sound like that. However, if everything else checks out fine, and I don't have the car in front of me to tell you, I'll be able to tell you immediately just by hearing it. Some of these engines, and they will make a whining noise, especially when they're cold. Um, and that's actually not from the engine. It's the two things, partially from the engine if the oil is really cold. The power steering pump, the oil, sorry, not the power steering, the oil pump will make a little whining noise that is completely normal. That's just the pump going through this thick oil because it's very cold. And then the same thing on the transmission side. The transmissions, the 6-speed transmission in Toyotas makes a super loud whine, and you'll even hear it driving. Not so much on the Lexus because it's well insulated, but like if you've driven, I don't know, 2012 Camry and you accelerate, there's a definite whine when they're cold. That's actually from the transmission. Pretty interesting when you hear it, just the transmission running and you spin it up. It makes a lot of noise, that pump, and that's normal. So I will 9, I think that says. I have a 2015 Camry. The AC smells bad. Tried some fixes that work temporarily. What's the best way to address this problem? In this video, I was supposed to film it this year, but now we're coming to winter. You're going to see a full video details next year, but let me share a few things with you. There's a sequence of events that you need to do when you have a bad AC smell. And the more you leave it smelling bad, the worse things get. Number one, and this is trial and error, and there's actually a TSB for this for certain models. Um, Step number one, and I know you're still using AC, turn the heater to full blast and leave it running for 15 minutes. Number one, that's the first thing you want to do. Then Toyota sells a kit that comes with 2 bottles and little hose attachment. Um, the hose attachment, you'll find the AC drain, put it there, pump it. Very clear instructions on the bottle. You're going to do that. And then you're going to follow the whole instructions of the kit. It all comes printed with it on the bottles themselves. Then you're going to replace your first, sorry, you got to remove the cabin filter before you do that. Most people don't, and it kind of becomes pointless. But remove the cabin filter, replace it with a charcoal activated cabin filter. Toyota sells them for your car. And then after that, you're going to want to make sure every time you use the AC, don't put it on max because it'll automatically put it on recirculate, and that's how the problems start. Just put it one click before max and make sure you're using fresh air all the time, not all the time, but as much as possible, because that's how these things start growing mold inside of them. And the last thing, if you really want to take it to the next level, when you park the car, of course, make sure it's on recirculate. Do not park your car in and this is going to sound very strange, in the heat of the summer, do not park your car in a very, very, very hot, non-ventilated, dark garage. The number that is the key thing here, because just imagine this. You bring your car in from outside, it's very hot, your garage is closed, it is not ventilated in any way, shape, or form, and it's not air conditioned. That's not very common in garages. You park your car, and now you have, let's talk about the conditions. Very hot, very humid, because now your AC condensate is dripping on the floor. Let's say if it's raining, or it gets really bad. Super humid, super hot, dark place. And inside the HVAC box, that's 10 times worse. So now this is perfect breeding grounds for mold and mildew. And that's what actually causes the bad smell. And if you try to alleviate, you can't change, you're not going to air condition your garage. That doesn't work. But you can alleviate some of these conditions. And some cars are more prone to this than others. And if your car is one of them, and that generation Camry, even the one before it, were very prone to this. So you're going to want to help it by putting a charcoal activated cabin filter. Make sure you get it as much ventilation as possible to help it not develop the smell. But even the cars that don't develop the smell, sometimes they could. You could have a car that's not prone to it, but put it in the right conditions, and that happens. I'll give you a perfect example. Mrs. Car Care Nut car. Sorry, Mrs. Car Care Nut. You know how much I love you, but let's say the truth. When my kids were younger, she did not drive as much. She was taking care of my kids, and she didn't really drive as much. The 2 cars she owned, they both had really bad issues because it was parked in the garage and, you know, not driven often, and she hates the smell from other cars. She always puts it in recirculate, and that was an issue that I had to deal with constantly. My car, I really like fresh air all the time, so I never had this issue because I'm always getting fresh air. So I understand that you're going to smell the fumes from other cars and all that, but you want to put it in fresh air as much as possible. That'll really help things. Eric D, can you replace one of the electric liftgate struts or for one hydraulic? This is because the issue with the liftgate not staying up due to added weight. So, Eric, I would love to know the um, model of car, because if it's an electric where the motor is integrated in the strut, you can't. You have to unfortunately replace them both and stay with the same design, unless you find the same strut and the mounts fit. They might not fit, but I would need to know the make of the car to give you more specific information. So Tony James, I have a 2011 Scion TC 2.5 liter manual transmission. When it comes time to do the clutch, should I replace the rear input shaft bearing? Is it a common issue on these? Should I wait for it to go bad before replacing it? I don't remember it being a common issue on these. Actually, that generation TC didn't have many problems. You might read online that somebody says, oh, there's a common failure point. The first question I asked him was this car modified and raced? Commodified and raced cars do not constitute common problems. Let's just put that in perspective. But if you're doing a clutch, replace the clutch, pressure plate, of course. Throw out bearing is a good idea. Bad or not, just replace it. They're inexpensive. And then the flywheel, if it has any cracks, heat marks, whatnot, take it to a machine shop, get it resurfaced. Um, have them check it. If they have questions, doubts about it, just replace it. They're very expensive through Toyota, so heads up for that. But that's how this life with a clutch, the cycle of the clutch is. But as far as input bearing, and now you're going inside the transmission, no, I wouldn't do that. So another question here, could you look at my 2011 Avalon, 75,000 miles? It's loud when driving around 70, 90 miles an hour. I'm wondering if it's a wheel bearing. So let's look at noise. And I don't know if you're in the Chicago area. If you are, send me an email with Chicago service request, and I'll schedule you in, or Mrs. Cargan will schedule you in, and we'll see you. I am booked until January, but um, about noise diagnosis, there are two types of noises that are very common, and you're going to hear them. The first one is tire noise. I want people to skip over the tire noise. Tires that are choppy, we talked about this in a video. They will mimic a wheel bearing noise, but there's one way to kind of tell them. Not at those speeds, that's kind of dangerous to do that. But if you swerve left and right gently, bearings will tend to get louder on one side, lesser on the other. Not always, but most of the time. Tire noise does not. It'll just stay exactly the same. It will not change. So that's the first thing. The second thing is wheel bearing. They are sealed bearings, and they do have a certain life point. Some last more than others. So that's your diagnosis scope. If you're in the Chicago area, contact me. We'll take a look at it. Let's see. Raymond Miller, what do you think of the new Venza? I really like it and believe that hybrids are the way to go for those of us with distance anxiety. So the new Venza is very good, I think. If you're absolutely looking to keep this 10, 15 years, get really high miles out of them and all that, I would not get the one with the, what you call a Stargaze sunroof, because we've had one fail and it was very expensive and very interesting to replace. It's glued onto the roof. That was not fun. But they are really good. I like this generation hybrid a lot. We've had almost zero problems with them, which usually after this generation, by the way, it's been out for 5 years, since 2016 Prius. We hadn't had much issues with this generation. It's just, I think it's every generation that comes out, we say this is the best until the problems start. But now we're 5 years in. There is no problems with this generation. There are common. Trust me, the previous generation, when 2010 Prius came out, within 5 years, we were EGR after EGR, and we were IPM after IPM. There was a lot of problems with that generation after 5 years in the first year. But the 2016 Prius and this generation hybrid is really good. I like the Venza. I think it gives you, it's basically a RAV4 in a suit, but not a $4,000 suit like a Lexus. It's just a mid-range suit. So it's a very nice car. Just wish they would move the start button because it's still very annoying. House of Dodard. I'm looking to purchase a 20 Platinum Highlander with 28,000 miles. Any common issues to look out for? Not really at this mileage. These should be good, but you still want to get, it doesn't have high mileage, but still some service history is good. No accidents, no rust. Doesn't look like it's been really abused or not taken care of, but this is a good car. Just take care of it. The radio will be something you'll deal with. That's how the new thing with Toyotas are. The radios are always needing updates and all that, but get it checked out, and I think that's a good buy, unless, well, the price is probably going to be inflated at this point, unfortunately, but what are you going to do? So the times we live in. Kalu Nat, how you doing, sir? Toyota Highlander 13, four-wheel drive, 110,000 miles. Sudden jerks only when I accelerate between 20 and 30 miles an hour. Transmission shift twine in all gears. Is it the four-wheel problem, or what could it be? So I don't think it's an all-wheel drive problem. I think that sudden jerking, especially between those two speeds, I wonder if the fluid has been replaced on this. So this is could be, and I'm not driving the car to know exactly what's going on, but what some people refer to as the bog, second gear bog, or the delay between second and third, and that sudden jump between the second and third gear, that is the first classic symptom of a Toyota lifetime fluid going south. That's the first sign. And many people, you would not believe, would not notice these signs. Now, you are noticing it, many people will, but some people just, they're not into cars. And I understand that. They're not going to notice this, and then they're going to notice it when it really gets really bad. But if the fluid has not been replaced, I would replace it. I know it's a little bit high miles, but you're not really extreme miles, and that transmission can take a little bit of beating. Another thing is the transmission memory. We're going to want to get that erased, reset, and see if it improves. I'm drawing a blank. If you need a scan tool for this one or not, try disconnecting battery overnight, see if it does it. If it drives exactly the same, then you're going to need a scan tool to do it. Otherwise, unfortunately, this is going to be one of those where diagnosis, if the fluid's been changed and if the memory's been reset and it's still the same, it's going to need some diagnosis with pressures and whatnot, see what's going on. Todd Livingston, I have a question. 2022 Toyota Avalon. This car was style built. Sorry, I'm having a hard time understanding the question. Let's just see if you know you didn't. 2022 Toyota Avalon. What can I tell you about it? It's the last year of the Avalon. I am sad they're not making the Avalon anymore, but you know what? I'm not going to cry over it because Toyota needs to make business decisions, and we all love the Avalon, yet we don't buy one. Or maybe I am. Who knows? We'll find out in a few weeks. CUTA 1995. What do you think of the new Tundra with a 3.5 twin turbo? We talked about this a little bit. I like it. I like the Tundra. I think they're heading in the right direction. Everybody that owns a Tundra today will say they're not, but ultimately, sales will decide that. See, here's the beauty of, and this is why I recently was asked by somebody, why are you so harsh on car journalists, and why are you, just talking about them openly like that? Well, here's the truth about car journalists. It seems like every car they say is not good stays in production, sells very good. People are very happy with it. And every car that they say, this is a great car, drives great, we love it, it's better than every competitor, goes out of production because nobody buys it. Isn't there something wrong with that picture? Am I the only one seeing that? Or I don't know. Do you see that? The Avalon. They said it was confused, but they praised it because it was nice. Because they said it was almost like a Lexus. Now it's going out of production. Please don't say that about the other models, because and then I'm already hearing that this is the problem. I've been watching reviews of the Toyota Tundra. I am not press. I don't get press cars because I guess there's whatever the case may be. I wait for them to actually arrive around somebody, dealers, friends that I have. We'll get one and we'll talk about it. But I'm watching the reviews, and they didn't even drive them, some of them. They just took them around the block, and they already have a giant opinion about them. I'm going to want to wait until this car is out and about, being driven, seen, before we have an opinion over it. That's the way I see it. So Art Vandelay. So I'm going to read you a whole comment. Loved your new video on the OEM parts. Thank you, sir. To help fellow car care nut fans, Parts UQ in the UAE has actual pictures for most parts, not just drawings, which I find helpful. Just put in OEM part number. So what is the website for that? I would love to know that website, and I'll look through the comments. Please post it at the bottom. I wonder if it's parts. This will be very helpful. Parts OUQ. Huh, let me try it. Parts OUQ. No, it's not popping up. Well, if you don't mind, Art, post it at the bottom of the chat so everybody would see it. Let me see here if you're posting it. I will look into this because this is very interesting. Thank you very much for that, by the way. Um, it would be really helpful. I'm gonna realize this after I did the video and I posted it. I'm like, wait a second, this doesn't work for Canada. This doesn't work for the Europeans and other parts of the world. So I'm gonna try to find, kind of investigate websites. I don't know how I'm going to pull that from the technical side. I'm not the biggest computer guru in the world, but let me see what I can find, if I can find alternative websites for our Canadian viewers and our European viewers and elsewhere. This might actually be a good help. So please post the website if you know it. Zafar Saeed, hey from Bolingbrook. Hello, neighbor. How you doing? Naveen the Machine. I've heard a lot of Camry owners have issues with the panel roof. Fortunately, mine hasn't had issues here, but I'm being cautious. Not sure how to prevent future issues from happening. See, the beauty, and I will say this, and this is the truth that hurts. The beauty of people that complain, they never say the full picture. You say panoramic sunroof problems. Are they really saying the whole picture? Did you open that sunroof when it was frozen? Did you mishandle it, open, close, and do many movements at the same time? They really don't tell you that. And unless you know that, there is no way to prove that there's an actually. I'm not seeing a lot of them here. Maybe we've seen one in the last month or so. They're not as active as they were when they first came out, honestly. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. Detached, from your experience, how do you go from electric seats, let's say in a Camry or 4Runner, and convert them to memory seats? I am 6 foot tall. My wife is shorter than 5 foot tall. So it is a little more difficult to really convert them. Honestly, and I know this is not going to answer your question directly, you actually want to start with a car with a memory seat because there's so much involved in memory seat. You can't just convert one into a memory seat because the body computer will be different. The Some of them depends on they'll have a module for that. So adding all this stuff is not, of course, cost effective. But even if you say, okay, well, that's fine, it's actually a lot more involved in that because you need some programming to make this work. This program, unfortunately, at a dealership level, is not allowed or available from Toyota. So this has to kind of go back to them. They're like, well, we don't allow modifications. This is one of the things that Toyota does not allow option adding after. Believe it or not, some other manufacturers do, but Toyota does not. So that's honestly, there is not much you can do about that one that makes financial sense. MGG 2008 IS3 250 clunking front end. Your thoughts, please. So control arm, sway bar links. You're just going to have to do a general suspension inspection and go from there. I mean, without having the car in front of me, I can't tell you exactly what it needs, but control arms, ball joints, and standard suspension inspection on this. Amit Shah, hi AMD, happy late birthday. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Hoping you could do a deep dive video on the 2009 13 Corollas, have an '08 Corolla, wanted your thoughts. So, if you have an '08 Corolla and it's running great, I would keep it versus buying an '09 13. Just there's nothing wrong with the '09 13, but going from an '08 to that generation, you're gonna not feel it the same quality. Um, I am actually, believe it, next weekend. I am filming a common problems for a '09 13 Corolla. If everything goes accordingly, you'll see their common problems, and you'll see that my general opinion of them is they're not the best feeling. They are reliable, but it just I think they kind of went down from '08 down, at least in quality of things. The early years were really had some scary issues, but it seems like 2011 and up were better. But still, they did have that cheap feeling where you get an '08, it feels much better and much more solid than the newer one. But that's just an opinion. But as far as reliability, of course, they have their issues. Years to avoid are '09, especially 2010 and up are good. So, right lane hog. Please take the mystery car to crown rust-proofing before it is attacked by salt. Well, if I answer that, I'm going to reveal the car, so I'm not going to do that. You'll see. You will see. Julian Anaya, please settle an old age debate. I love to do that, if I can. Does higher octane gas help prolong your engine and or MPG? We can absolutely resolve that one. There is the scientific, and then there is real life experience, and then it's where everybody says on the internet. Depends who you're listening to. Here is the collection of mix between the three, and this is my opinion. Scientifically, there is absolutely no effect, or should not be an effect, because higher octane fuel doesn't equal better fuel. Let's just get that out of the picture. A lot of people think that premium fuel is cleaner, purer, much better. No, it has more octane. It is more stable, but doesn't mean that the 87 is not stable and all over the place. No, the cars that have high compression and have higher temperatures and pressures inside the combustion chamber, they need that more stable gas to behave in these harsher environments. But regular cars that are rated for 87, they don't have these harsh environments, so that slightly less stable fuel will be just fine. But here is where people report we have better gas mileage from premium, is when you live in a place where they use ethanol in gas. Most places uses up to 10, sometimes 15% ethanol in regular gas. If you have premium, that some premiums in some areas does not have ethanol, have 0% ethanol. In that case, you're absolutely going to get better gas mileage. And actually, this is better for your car. But if you can find regular gas with no ethanol, it'll do exactly the same. So that's where I want you to see this whole thing. So that's the bottom line. If you have a car that says this car uses 87, use 87. You have absolutely no benefit using premium, regardless of what anybody says. But if you have a car that is not driven right, always operating in the wrong conditions, like short trips kill cars. Every time you drive your car from very cold, you drive it 2 miles and shut it off, that is harsh driving. Even if you drove it the slowest, that destroys the internal of the transmission, of the engine. Sorry. That is very harsh conditions. If you repeatedly do that, and now all your driving is short distances, you're going to have issues, not because of the 87 or premium. You're going to have issues because of these driving conditions. So do you see how this could be all mixed up in an age-old debate? Why people have different opinions about it? And they're not lying, but these are the different aspects of this. So that's why just stick with what's recommended in your owner's manual and focus on driving better, healthier driving. So Art, I saw your comment. I am going to research this. He said Park Souk, which means actually market in Arabic. I will look into that, and when I find it and find an actual website for it, I will post it. I will pin it on the video for the part so everybody can see it. RSK 16 GS 350 at 100,000 kilometers. Plan to change all kinds of oil next early year dealership. A mechanic, OEM oils versus brand for trans, proper maintenance at 100,000 kilometers. This is 100,000 kilometers. So coolant, I would use original coolant. That's coming up soon. Another thing is transmission fluid. I would absolutely use original fluid. If you have a good mechanic that you trust, really they will do the same as the dealership. If you don't and you want it done with a relatively good warranty and good reputation, go to the dealership, because there are good mechanics outside the dealership, but if you don't know one, you don't know if you're going to a good one or not. So that's not saying the dealership's always good, but at least the dealership have a deep pocket. If something goes south, they'll take care of you. That's really the theory. Josh Armbruster, what is your preferred car undercoating to prevent rust? can it still be done if there is surface rust present? 2019 Corolla. So I like fluid film because it's very DIY, very easy to apply, and it's not, toxic and horrible and all this mess. Um, the thing about rust proofing is if you have a little bit of rust present, brush it down, clean it, and then rust proof it. Because rust, if you block it from oxygen, it's actually going to stop, and that's the main thing with rust. Some rust converters work, and they basically chemically neutralize the rust and whatever. Some of them don't work, and the ones that work are very expensive, very difficult to apply and whatnot. So spray it over it and call it a day. Don't overcomplicate life. Fluid film blocks it, and that's how it actually works. So it's really good. I would use it. Crown is another company, but we don't use it here. They really do good work, and they're similar to fluid film. Byron, I have a 2015 Camry that I drive 600 miles a week, mostly 100 to 200 miles round trip. I also do in-town deliveries, about 30 or 50 miles. I have 191,000 miles on this Camry. Should I sell it or keep it? Honestly, at this miles, if it's not burning oil, if it's overall in general good shape, I would keep it. But this is where it seems like when cars get to their milestone, and that's because a lot of salespeople are just numbers people. They actually don't know nothing about cars. The people that actually decide the values of cars. Um, Mileage milestones affect the value of the car significantly. So if you're at 98,000 miles, and you decide to sell your car, sell it right there. But if you're going to keep it, don't just go to 101 and then sell it. You're going to lose a lot of money on the trade-in because they look at it like, does this car have from 50 to 75,000 miles, or 75,000 to 100,000? That's how they're punching it in the computer, and that's how they're going to find out the value. But in reality, a car that has 98,000 miles and a car that has 101,000 miles are exactly the same, because if we are good at rudimentary math, that is 3,000 miles, and that's not going to kill anybody, but the value just goes down because now this has over 100,000 miles and this one has less than 100,000 miles. So right now you're approaching that really big milestone of 200,000. If you're going to trade it in, now is the time. If you decide to keep it, just keep it until the wheel fall off, because if it's not burning oil at this point, which is the only problem you could have with this car, I would just keep it, honestly, because these are really good cars. If if the oil maintenance was done on time and it has no oil consumption, I would keep it till the wheels fall off and wouldn't hold my breath because it'll be a while. So, Colorado Boo, how you doing, sir? Our old 2008 Corolla power steering has a black film inside the canister that remained after I drained, filled it. Anything I could do safely to clean it out? So this is very common on these. So what you're going to want to do is the two hoses that go to the reservoir. Some people will tell you put a brush, do all this. Nothing works. Here's what works. Clamp the two lines that are going to the power steering reservoir. Take as much fluid as out possible, turkey baster, if you have some extraction device. Take the reservoir out. Make sure you're clamped both lines so it wouldn't make a mess everywhere, and now you have to bleed it. Take it, fill it up with brake clean, wash it, really get inside of it, try to find a brush that fits through the holes, clean it really well, and then put it back. It'll be fine. But I wouldn't make this the top of the priorities, because some of this stuff is caked on there. It's not really going to affect anything. You replace the fluid and call it a day. But if you are a car care nut, which I know you are, go for it. Just take it out, clean it. That's the easiest way. If you can find a brush that fits inside of it, it's a very small opening. If you can find something, great, try it. But if it doesn't and you really want it perfect, just take it out and clean it outside. Birch White, I have a 2021 SR5 4Runner LED fog lights, low beams. Can I upgrade my high beams to LED like the 2022 headlights? I believe you can. I would have to look at the diagram to make sure nothing. Probably something did change, but it should be an okay upgrade. It should be not something extremely difficult, because we're talking about the same car here. They just slap some different headlights on it. So you might have to do a little bit of pin-out change, but honestly, I would have to look at it. This is not something I know right off the top of my head. So Zafar Said, Sorry, you were answering somebody else. Raymond Miller, Audis and BMWs are money pits. If you want one, lease it until your warranty expired, then dump it. Unless you're a mechanic. I own one of these money pits. It's actually I enjoy it a lot. So let's see here. There we go. George Gregory Petty. Will the 2024 Toyota Prius Prime be fueled by hydrogen? Folks, I don't think so because the Mirai is alive and well, but unfortunately, the Prius is not doing so well, at least from what I see. I don't see them really being delivered. I know we're in the shortage, but still, I see every single model being delivered, but not the Prius. Seems like nobody's buying it. They're buying the Corolla hybrid, which I anticipated, and I saw this. In my opinion, I'm like, well, if you got a Corolla hybrid, which is essentially the same as a Prius, why would anyone buy a Prius at this point? Unless you really want the ultimate hybrid, if you would, from a hybrid, from an efficiency standpoint, not necessarily a very good car. So I don't know. The Prius is kind of going cold. Let's put it this way. Don't know if there's going to be even a new generation, and that should be coming up here soon. And we should have heard something by now. And it's absolutely quiet because all the internet cares about is the 2022 Tundra and the 2023 to 24 Tacoma and the new 4. That's all they care about. Nobody cares about the Prius. And sure, you know what? I remember Mr. Jeremy Clarkson when he made fun of it and he destroyed one, whatever, first generation Prius. But I was recently watching a video, like a little tour. I don't know if you guys watch Professor Kelly. He's epic, isn't he epic? From Weber Auto, I think the channel is called. He's awesome, very knowledgeable guy. He was taking a tour of the new facility that they're in for. They do hybrid training. By the way, somebody have asked me on one of the previous live streams if how do you get hybrid trained or certified or at least understand the safety so you can work with them. Weber Auto is a place to do that. I didn't know that they were open to the public like that, but they are. So that's another thing for you. But he was talking about the first generation Prius, and they had one right there. He's like, thanks to this car, we have all the EV and hybrid revolution, which is true. So every time you see a Tesla in the street and the Tesla community is the loudest and the most obnoxious, sometimes not everybody, there's some nice people too, but they always bash gasoline. Let's stop the gasoline car. Let's do this. And they see a Prius and this is just a cut rate Tesla and whatnot. All this started with the first generation Prius. So every time you see one, if you drive a hybrid today, look, the first generation Prius, it was not impressive. It didn't look good. It was not a great hybrid, but everything started there. And it was the laughing stock of the world. But today, it laughs at the world for being behind. So that's one thing about the Prius. But unfortunately, it's getting a little cold as a model because there are now alternatives that seem better. Eric Ortiz, I have a V6 rear-wheel drive SR505 4Runner, 120,000 miles. I have never changed transmission fluid. Should I change it now? That's a good one. Honestly, this is a little borderline. I would take a small sample and see how it looks. If it's severely burned, I would leave it alone. If it looks semi-clean, I would replace it. Just a drain and fill, nothing more. Peter, sorry, that's why we were answering another comment. Jay, my GS300 Mark II is clunking from forward to reverse. What do you think could be causing it? It's either pad shift or something in the suspension. Unfortunately, this is the kind of thing that will need in-person diagnosis. That's really hard for me to tell you exactly what's wrong, but you'll want to check the suspension, and it could be a pad shift where the pad shift every time you change direction. Eric Robertson, should I flush my 2004, my 4Runner's transmission at 50,000 miles? Both Toyota dealer around me said they don't do drain and fills. You could flush it. That's okay. As long as they check the fluid level afterwards, make sure it's good after the flush. at that low miles, it's good. You can actually wait until 60,000 miles without issues. But if you want to do it early, I'm not going to discourage you from doing that. But flush is good as long as they do a fluid level check afterwards. Ah, you guys picked up. I finally convinced Mrs. Car Care not to change her YouTube name to actually Mrs. Car Care not. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's give my better half a round of applause. She is a hero on this channel. You guys just don't know it. So, Rick Gala, your opinion: I own 3 Toyotas and 1 Lexus and have great luck with Ekibono brake pads. So, Ekibono makes good brake pads, but it depends. This is where we come to. To me, I would not put other than OEM stuff. That's just how I am. But that's my opinion. It could be different where you try Akebono and you like them. But to me, I like to stick with original pads, and I will always encourage it. Uh, this is the way I see it. What's good for me is good for you. What's not good for me is not good for you, because I only will advise you of what I would do as a professional. Um, I sometimes make bad choices that I always say this is not a bad idea. This is not a good idea, and I will tell you that flat out. But as far as brakes, and this is a long debate that we don't want to get into and waste everybody's time, but Akebono is a good brand. I will say that to you right now, but I would still go with OEM. That's just me. Rosando Sanchez, do 2001 Sequoia even have a cabin filter inside? Can't find it. I believe that year did not have a cabin filter. I am drawing a blank on it right now. At some point they did, but if you don't find it, I don't think they did actually. The first generation at all did not have it. If memory serves right, they did not. So if it's not behind the glove box, then it's not there. Matt Josephson, I have a 2009 Matrix with 2.9, 129,000 miles on it. Is there a place to enter the VIN number to see if the ring problem was fixed? I haven't driven enough to see if it's using oil. So the dealership will be able to tell you that if this is a US model. You can call them, give them the VIN number, see if it was fixed under the campaign or the campaign just expired. So that's how you're going to know if it's been fixed. I mean, obvious signs, you can look at the engine, it's been taken apart. You'll see the sealer. If the sealer is not gray, it's black, that means the whole engine's been taken apart. But, that's one sign, but you don't know what was taken apart for. So best is to call the dealership and have them check the VIN number. Let's see. Here we go. John Abel. What is the issues with 2017 Toyota Highlander? People tell me not to buy that year. So this is where let's talk about this. There's no way but to talk about it. 2017 Sienna and Highlander, believe it or not. I usually tell people skip this year because the difference between a 17 and 18 is very small price wise. Although that recommendation came at a time when they were a dime a dozen, they were everywhere. Now that's not the case. But that was a year where they had some issues with the 8-speed transmission. But in response to these issues, Toyota did issue an extended warranty for the models affected, and you're covered. So in the end, it is the same. But do you want to buy a car that you have a choice to buy an 18 or 19 and a 17? Do you want to buy that 1 year that you could have an issue and now you're taking it to the dealer, dealing with the transmission replacement or whatever the case may be, and all this mess? If you have the choice, you're buying it today, go with an 18 plus. That way you know it has an updated transmission and life's good. If you don't, if you already bought a 17, let's say you bought it new, well, it's not the end of the world because you're covered. But you just need to be aware there could be at some point an issue. There could not be, but if there is, you're covered, and you need to know about it, be aware of it. Jack Bordonaro, I have a 21 Highlander hybrid, 24,000 miles. Now, when purchased, it has now 9,500 miles. At first, I couldn't feel a transition between electric and engine. I can now. Normal or computer issue? That is normal. The transition is very smooth. compared to the previous models. Trust me, the first and second generation Prius were terrible with the transmission. It just shook the whole car. Most people never complained about it. They didn't mind it. But compared to the newer ones, it's a lot better now. So yes, they will feel some difference when they switch, but it's nothing I'm concerned about. Robbie Hyde, what do you think is better for Uber drivers, a Corolla hybrid or Camry hybrid? Do you think Camry hybrid is worth the extra 4K? Honestly, I think so, because the Camry is, this is just my opinion. The Camry is a bigger car for your passengers. You also want to, you're working as a professional driver. You're basically, this is a customer service business. If your car is comfortable and that your passengers are comfortable, they're more prone to potentially tipping, giving you a good review for Uber and whatnot. So having a Camry as a business investment, this is a business, you're not buying it for pleasure, might make sense because it's bigger car, it's more comfortable. And then the other thing is you are spending extreme amount of time in this car. You want it to be as comfortable as possible. Now, $4,000 over the life of the car is not a large investment. This is a business investment. This is not a personal choice. But in the end, it goes back to you as the business owner. You make the decision. You are self-employed at this point. You know how this works. Um, it To me, the $4,000 difference is worth it to go into the Camry, but you need to look at your finances and decide from there. But for Uber, I think either model, you're already zoned in the right models, because buying a hybrid for Uber is a great decision. Whichever one you buy, they're really good. And as far as the size, I know I might have not helped you much, but I don't think the difference, $4,000. I know it's a lot of money, but the Camry is also bigger than the Corolla, and you want to think of it from all directions when you make your decision. I hope this helps you. Best of luck to you, Uber drivers. You have a lot of respect for me because that's a tough job. Salvador Garcia. When do I have to change the timing belt on a 2008 Lexus ES350 with 84,000 miles? So, Salvador, the 2008 Lexus ES350 has a timing chain. So, that doesn't really have a service interval. You just drive it and life is good. If the rest of the maintenance, your oil changes are done on time and everything, you have nothing to worry about. They last the life of the engine without any issues. And because they're made out of metal, there's no timing belt. So, that's Colorado. Boo, you're wearing the Car Care Not t-shirt today. That's awesome, man. Well, we're trying to work on them again. That's something that's coming up. We gotta come up with some new designs for the new year. So sure, 2016 ES350, bad gas mileage, 170 miles, full tank, car has 65,000 miles. So let's go through every time you have an issue with gas mileage, you want to go through the stuff that nobody thinks about that actually causes it most of the time. Tires, brakes, maintenance. So the first thing is tires. Did you just put new tires? Are your tires worn unevenly? They have choppy edges. All this adds up. And then second most important thing, are your brakes locked up? Even the slightest bit. This is how it works. And then third thing, maintenance. Is all your maintenance up to par? Filters, oil changes, spark plugs. And then you start with diagnosis actually for this, because most of the time these three will cover it and you'll find the reason. Another thing is weather. If the temperature drops, your gas mileage goes out the window. That's how this works. There's a lot of questions that I'd love to ask you about this, but um, more information. How long do you own the car? When did you notice it dropped? All this stuff. Folks, please try not to repeat the questions multiple times because this jams up the chat and it wastes time for others that I'm trying to get to their questions. Roger B, what is your opinion for PSV longevity? I have a 2012 with 115,000 miles, been fine so far. So those had the very famous 10,000 mile oil change interval. And if you followed it, unfortunately, in certain circumstances, you could be causing oil consumption. The 12s did have they were very prone to oil consumption. But if you follow it up with good maintenance, it should minimize it. Otherwise, they don't really have a lot of issues. They do have some battery failures because an alarming large majority of owners do not even know that there is a filter installed in these underneath the passenger seat. So you passenger side of the rear seat. So just peek underneath it with a headlight with a flashlight, and you'll see a filter there. I cannot count how many times I have gotten a Prius V in the shop and I peek my head there and there's a box or a newspaper or some clothes just flat jamming the opening. That's, I think, if there's anything that Toyota did not do well with the hybrids, is awareness of the maintenance. I think I'm trying to do that because they're fabulous cars and they're great and they last a very long time. But people, if you don't know, you don't know. Not everybody's a car guy. Not everybody's a DIY mechanic. They need to bring more awareness over this because it's very important. It is the life or death of that battery. I mean, that's so. Please check those. Otherwise, it's a good car. K Razy, are Lexus UX 250H reliable? Recently bought a used 2021 with 25,000 miles. Again, we go back to the same hybrid thing. This is the latest generation hybrid with a very good engine in it attached to it. This is similar. This will be similar to, your RAV4 generation of hybrid, something of that nature. It's a little bit modified for the Lexus side, but essentially it is the same generation, and it's a very good Lexus generation. Sorry, hybrid generation. Daniel Tamayo, what do you think is the best car for someone who wants to do taxi work and wants an SUV? So you're probably a RAV4 hybrid. That would be a good option. Depending on what your market is in. If we have a Corolla Cross hybrid, that would be also good. Don't know when we're going to get that in the US. I hope we do. And otherwise, stay with the RAV4 hybrid. You just can't go wrong with these. Venza hybrid might be too fancy for a commercial car, but that's also an option for you. So Michael AT, first time participating in the live stream. Well, thank you so much for participating. I appreciate it. So here's the question. Do you know a way to know the Japanese part number and the TRD part number of the same piece? That's a good number. That's a good question. So usually, and this is always the case, except some TRD parts, the part itself, the box or the case or the bag or whatever, it'll have a sticker on it and it'll tell you where it's made. I hope I'm understanding your question correctly. Sometimes, and this is where when you get into the TRD part numbers, they get a little complicated because there is an OEM part number and then there is a TRD catalog part number. They're the same, but unfortunately, there's no way to tell which without actually looking at the part. Every part will say, if you're asking where it's made, it'll say on it. It should say on it, even the TRD ones. And this is kind of the same dilemma with the Denso part numbers, which that is a whole different thing because there we go, genuine Toyota part number. Oh, here we go. It is, so genuine Toyota part is 081 64 2150, and a TRD part number is 00602 08154. So it's possible that it is actually the same part. Toyota have known to do that when they have their TRD catalog number and their OEM number, because this car had this same part from the catalog, and I hope this will make sense. This same part from the catalog, that is an accessory installed at the factory. I hope this makes sense, but it should be the same part, not a completely different part. It's the same. David, and thank you, JT, for that, by the way. I appreciate it. Now this makes sense. It didn't make sense to me initially. David N, my 07 FJ still runs like new. After all these years, this thing is impossible to kill. Any advice? Will it ever die? Do you need advice how to kill it? We can do that. No. Um, it is a very good car. That is a very one of the top ones, probably up there with the Forerunner, maybe even Land Cruiser a little bit. But I would just keep going. The only thing that will kill these, if you move to Illinois and don't wash the frame, then it'll rot, and that'll be the end of that. But otherwise, the thing will run forever. That's how they are. And pretty soon, I actually have an awesome viewer that I got to know. He will volunteer his truck so we can do a common problems video. You're going to notice a lot of the theme, rust, and otherwise they're small, really small little things, but they're really good. They're really good cars. So let's see. Naveen the Machine, thoughts on carbon ceramic brakes? Worth getting aftermarket on a Toyota. Pros and cons, maintenance, longevity. Well, if they're proper carbon ceramic brakes, they're probably going to be $15,000. That's just if we are talking about the same thing here. But I don't think they're worth it, honestly. Your designs in Toyotas, you're kind of limited by the size of the caliper and the overall design. So putting better pads will not do it. You're going to want to upgrade upgrade everything, unless you mean the upgrade. Maybe if you give me something specific example, we'll look into it. Gary Phillips, in need of a car. I don't want to spend too much, but want a new Camry hybrid for that MPG here in California. However, everything is over MSRP. Not having a car is costing me money. Is it worth paying over? Gary, I am so sorry you're caught in this situation. Let me just say that. Unfortunately, right now, if you absolutely need a car because you do not have a car, you can't get to work, you can't make a living, you have no choice in this point. But make phone calls. Even if you want to drive maybe a little further outside of your area, maybe have a friend, family member drive you there. If you can find that one honest dealer that wants to sell you at MSRP or even a little bit over MSRP, not something crazy. And if you're stuck, you have no other choice, pay over MSRP, what are you going to do? But the most important thing that you do to cover yourself financially in case something happens, first of all, this is a car that you will absolutely want to keep a very long time, because if you're going to pay over MSRP, you cannot consider selling this after 3 to 5 years. It's going to be a very bad financial decision. The second thing is that it's very important that you do get a gap insurance. I don't know, California, they have different laws or whatnot, but gap insurance covers you in this specific scenario. You bought this Camry, let's say the Camry cost $30,000. The dealer decided to put their little cake on top of that, let's say it's 35. Well, if you get in an accident after a year, the insurance company will all of a sudden tell you, oh, well, this car is worth $23,000. Here's a check. Have a nice day. Well, you still owe 5,000 miles on this car. Now what? Who's going to pay that difference between what the insurance paid you and what you actually owe on it? The gap insurance will cover that. It's not very expensive to have, and I usually recommend it for most people, unless the dealership is gouging on that. Usually they're not relatively inexpensive. They add a few bucks to your payment. But in this case, it is absolutely worth it. Not because you're going to sell the car, but in case you get in an accident, at least you have coverage. At least, yeah, you lost the car and all the payments that you made, but you're not paying out of pocket to close your loan. That is not good. And that's the only disadvantage to paying over MSRP, is that old cars will go underwater when you buy them new for up to a year. But when you pay over MSRP, now you're underwater for a lot longer. And that's why I say this is not good. These dealerships, people called me all kinds of things when I put that video out. Couldn't really care less, because this is not supply and demand. This is different. You're adding such a significant margin to these cars. I recently saw somebody sent me a picture of a Mercedes dealership. Let's talk about this for a second, because this is gonna blow your mind, guys. A Mercedes dealership, and I actually can pull that because I have the text from my friend. You can see. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but I'll read you the number off of it. 2021 Mercedes G6 G-Wagon 63 AMG. The MSRP is $185,000, 150, sorry, that was a weird number. um, the market value adjustment, so how much is their markup? $125,000 to a grand total of 310, 150,000 miles. Let me just say one thing. If anybody comes to me and tells me, oh, just supply and demand, that's normal. No, that's not how this works. This is just robbery. Sorry. You want to sell at MSRP? Come on. I've been working in this business a little too long to not know these. Paying or at MSRP, the dealership makes full profit on this car. You pay over MSRP, fine, but not 15,000 over MSRP. It's one thing with supply and demand when you're buying a roll of toilet paper that costs, I don't know, 50 cents. Now it costs you $2. That's not going to bankrupt anybody. But paying $15,000 over a cost of a car is going to affect people's finances, and we're going to pay for that later when things go south. Sorry, I went on this rant, but it really bothers me when the big guy takes advantage of the small guy. It's just not right, and supply and demand, whatever, is not right. That's the end of that. Sorry. Rant is over. I just love you guys too much. So, Gary Phillips, I wish you the best, sir. Unfortunately, you might have to go with that, but absolutely go with the gap insurance. So, RSK, you're following up to the question you asked earlier. This is a 16 GS350. We were doing some maintenance. The car will hit 100,000 miles soon. Is it a good idea to have? If you trust your mechanic, go ahead and go for it. If you don't, you have questions about them, then go with the dealership. At least, they have deep pockets in case something goes south. So RDA Midwest, sorry. What is the most trouble-free late model Avalon, say 50,000 miles? I think the 2013. Okay, let me clarify this. All Avalons are really good. I really haven't seen one that is a disaster, even first generation all the way to the end. But the highlights, and we're talking about newer ones, the highlight will be 2013 all the way to 18. Their prices are relatively good for what they are. And a highlight of that generation is 16, 18. They seem to have better suspension. They're more comfortable. If you want the ultimate comfort, then go with 05 to 2012, sorry, with the highlight in that generation being the 11 to 12. They did improve a few things that made it better. Try to avoid the early ones, 05, 06, not because they're not good, but this is the oldest. This is the first year of the 2G RFE. And if that owner was not on top of their things when the car was under warranty and replaced a few things that were vital, you could end up buying one right now that has a lot of old nightmares that come with it. So these are the years that I would be looking at today. If you already own an 05 or 06 Avalon, it's not a bad car, but you want to buy ones that have updated parts always. So, Armando, does the 1998 GS300 have issues with engine oil leaks that are common? Valve cover gaskets that were notorious, and then the valve cover gasket leaks and it fills the spark plug tubes, and this is seen countless of these. So yeah, those are not really bad to do. You just got to take that Y pipe out. Doesn't two JZ engine is very easy to work on. It's like the stepping stone. Looks very intimidating, but it's super simple, especially compared to the stuff today. All right, guys. So we're gonna take a few last questions. I'll just go randomly here, and we'll call it a day. So Sammy T, this is a good one. Let's talk about this one. Do all eight generation Corolla absolutely positively burn oil as they age? My 2002 Corolla, not even 100,000 miles. I've been using synthetic oil since new, and it's not burning oil. Is it a matter of time? If you really you seems like you went overboard to take care of this car, and you know what? You're getting paid right now because that generation Corolla, they are notorious for this. But if at this age it is not burning oil, I think you're good. I think you've done something really well, which a lot of people didn't do in those days. Um, in this case, it might not be a matter of time, and you might be an exception. I mean, not everybody will, day one, start taking care of this car and do synthetic oil since it was new and probably do it at a lower interval. It's, you're doing something that majority of owners didn't do. So right now you're reaping the benefits of doing that. And I'm happy for you because I've seen so many Corollas of this year burn oil and have so many problems. It's not good. And I hope this is not a rusty one because these really do not do well with rust. If there's not a rusty one, that's a giant plus. All righty, let's take another one here. So Omar Alvarado, this is actually a really good question. Is the Haynes online manual a good source for DIY maintenance and repair, or what is the best source for DIY maintenance and repair? So, Omar, it depends where you live. If you're in the US, and I'm sorry, I am being, not finding resources for, our Canadian viewers and all our brothers and sisters from across the world. But it's really hard because I'm not physically there to really try some, sometimes I go to some of these websites. I can't access them because it knows that I'm in the US. I know I can use a proxy or whatever you call it, one of these things. But Haynes Online Manual is probably the least on my list. See, some of these companies they made their fame, selling these books and whatnot, but they're gone. The Haynes Manual is not great. The best manual is the original manual, and if you are in the US, Tech Info. I am in the process. I'll share with you why I'm not doing this video. This is actually I wrote the link, techinfo.toyota.com. I want to do a video because this is the exact, when you go to that website, you can make a subscription. It's relatively expensive. I mean, I think it's $20 a day or whatnot, but this is the same exact manual that the dealership has. I've been to it. It's exactly the same of what we get at the dealership. And it has every single thing you ever want. It has way more information than anybody needs for DIY. But the problem is it becomes kind of difficult to navigate through it and find information because it is meant for professionals who will use it every single day and they are super used to it. So what I wanted to do is I want to make a video, make a subscription there, and kind of walk you through it, how to navigate through it, how to find all the information. This was actually a request for my awesome Patreons. Patreons, by the way, I don't know if you guys know this or not, if there's any Patreons here. We do have a chat going on, and I asked them, as supporters of the channel, what do you want for content? What do you want me to prioritize? And that was one thing they asked for. Where is the good DIY resource? And I told them this, but again, the question came up is, well, I logged in there and it was very complicated. And I understand that it's meant for professionals and it's a little difficult to navigate through it. So I would love to do that, but there's one problem. Every website that I feature, I try to go into their, privacy policy, whatever the case may be, that they don't mind fair use. Now, that one website, it actually do mind. I do need to have their express written consent. I told you that I respect Toyota and their privacy and all their proprietary stuff. So I am trying to get access and talk to them about it, just take their permission. It's a fair use. I am basically going to tell people how to use this website so they can actually use it more effectively. It is a public website. There's nothing about it, but I still have to go through the motions and do things right. So I am working on that. If any of my Patreons is watching this, I am working on this one. David and Elizabeth, thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you. And don't forget to set your clocks back tonight. Is the time changing this week? God bless iPhones. Let's just say that. Because I haven't, ever since I have my phone on automatic, I've never had this problem. Although it is the best excuse to show up early or late, depends which one it is to work. But don't do that. That's not good. All right, guys, let's take the last question. And if you've been watching my channel for a while, what is the last question? The last is always first. Here we go. Ken Carr, 2018 Avalon, auto high beam, green AHB auto light on the dash, turns itself on and off at random when green light is on. System works great, but system shuts itself on off at random times. So this is gonna need actually diagnosis, because if the camera is misaligned, it's actually not gonna see things the right way, or if there's an issue with the front recognition camera, it's kind of gonna go all over the place. But I want to make sure that we know how the system works. Most of these models, you push the button, you need to push the stock back for it to come on. That is the thing. If you don't have it on, it's not going to work. And every time you flash your lights, you're going to pull it. You need to push it back so to actually engage. That is the biggest thing, and I want you to be aware of how it works, how it's supposed to work. I know it's a kind of a. It doesn't make sense that it's a two-step process. I mean, most people will assume, okay, we're going to push the button, it's on, we're done. No, you actually have to push the stock back. Some models, and this is where this is the kind of little stuff that Toyota sometimes doesn't do too well, is standardizing things. Some models you just push the button and it's good. Some models you push the button, push the stock, and then when nobody kind of stopped and said, everybody's so focused on making everything super reliable, nobody's focused on the process. Like, why can't we just make it just the button? Perhaps there's a reason why they have to do that, but then you have in the next model that doesn't have that, and it's like, this doesn't make sense. So let's get familiar first with how it works. And if it's having this issue, then perhaps there's an issue with the recognition camera, calibration, whatever the case may be. That's what I would look after. All right, folks. Hold on. Let's see. Okay, so Ken Carr, I'm reading your comment here. Auto high beam, all systems are set correctly. Stock pressed forward, dark outside, stock light set to auto. I'm very familiar with the system. Okay. If it's not activating, they're gonna have to, at the dealership, they're gonna have to access the images of the camera to see what it's seeing. Could need a calibration. That's really the process for going with this, because it needs to see a complete darkness for it to turn them on. And if it's intermittently going in and out, there might be something going on with the camera, because that's really the only component that this system uses. If it doesn't see any lights, it's going to come on. As soon as it picks up a light and it processes it as an oncoming car, it's going to turn them off. So that's the only component that needs to be checked. All right, guys. So with that, thank you so much for watching the live stream. And the next live stream is going to be on next Saturday at 7 p.m. Same time. We're back on the schedule. And I think the next break we're going to take is potentially the 27th. Well, I'll tell you when we get there. But we are here next week, 7 p.m. Thank you so much for watching the live stream. I really appreciate everybody. It's really good to catch up with you guys. Until the next live stream, guys, may the Lord bless you and keep you. And you guys have yourself a wonderful day.